Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Good evening, Cheryl. How are you doing?
Good. How are you, Dr. Ping?
Yeah, we actually know each other for a while now. I don't remember
Several
when,
years. Yeah.
maybe 2018 or something time frame.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I think I definitely got to know you because you are an advocate for the student with dyslexia,
Yes.
and also you homeschooled all your kids, right?
Not all of them.
Okay.
Um, my youngest one, I'm doing online
Okay.
at
Okay.
home. So
Oh,
it's
I
in
see.
DLS.
Okay. Was it online school?
It started out as a hybrid. We were doing Hoosier Academy
Right.
since third grade. And then he was going to the Learning Center for 2 days. And now he's home every day. But
Okay.
yeah,
Oh, okay. So in a way, it's kind of homeschooling.
he's here.
Okay.
No.
How long you been doing that?
Well, he's a junior, so since third grade, so
Oh,
third, fourth,
wow.
fifth, sixth, yeah, 9 years.
Wow, that's a long time. And so he's junior now. And is he what's his plan for college?
I think he's thinking along the lines of engineering,
Oh, okay.
really interested in engineering and
Right.
computers, and
And any particular school?
we haven't decided. He hasn't really decided yet.
Yeah. Well, my daughter just graduated from Rose Holman, so I'm kind
Oh.
of not biased towards that. Mhm. Well, she definitely had a good time there.
Oh, good.
Right. I mean, it's hard, but
Uh-huh.
get they are small school and all classes are taught by professors.
Well, that's good.
Uh, so and they do take care of you once you get in. It's kind of hard to get in, but once you get in, they actually take good care of you.
Hmm.
Yeah, like my daughter actually, her second year she was the RA assistant, and
Mhm.
the third and fourth year she was RA. So that's part of her job to make sure everyone is doing okay.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, if you didn't turn in the homework, and
Yes.
she'll go there to check it out. Which is different from like my son. My son went to Ball State and nobody cared there.
Nobody cares.
This is a big school.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, you didn't show up to work, show up to school, nobody knows about you.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. So we actually going to talk a little about this. We really actually a lot about dyslexia because I think first of all, uh, not many parents are aware how to deal with that, and especially if you want to homeschool your kid and your kid have dyslexia, and how do you deal with that?
It's
And
really all about instruction,
right,
the type of instruction.
right, and uh, so what is dyslexia?
So I'm going to read to you the definition first, because it's the piece of legislation that we put into Indiana's
Right.
code
Mm,
in 2015. So it is a specific learning disability that's neurological in origin, and that means you're born with it, basically.
mm.
It's characterized by difficulties with accurate and or fluent word recognition and by poor spelling and decoding abilities.
Oh, okay.
So basically, fluent word recognition, poor spelling, and decoding. The difficulties typically result from a deficit in the phonological component of the brain.
Oh, okay. So there is something in our brain which causes that.
Yes, and it's unexpected in relation to other cognitive abilities, and the provision of effective classroom instruction. So a lot of times these kids are bright and they're
Right.
very bright, right? But
Yeah.
they just struggle to learn to read.
So they don't fit in that well with classroom uh, lecturing, right? Classroom learning would be
Well,
a problem.
I think the issue is that um, we tend to be a whole language state. We're using a lot of balanced literacy,
Hmm.
and clear back in 1997, Congress put together the leading reading researchers to look at over 100,000 studies to say, how should we be teaching kids how to read?
Mm.
What they found is that explicit systematic phonics instruction is important for every classroom, but it's critical for students with learning disabilities and students who are at risk through low socioeconomic level. However, that was in 2000 when that report came out, and we have yet to move forward in that area.
Okay.
So we've been trying to push relative to legislation.
Okay. But it does require a different kind of teaching. Is
It
that?
shouldn't. I mean, because what we're finding, if you look at the data, our tier 1 instruction in most
Mm.
schools is not working for most children.
Oh, why is that? What's the reason behind that?
Because most schools use balanced literacy, and it's not based on systematic synthetic phonics in the early grades.
Oh, wow. Do you know
So
why? Do you know why they changed that? Because as I understood, that was how it was done, right? In the past, like you had to
years and
learn your phone.
I think they've gone through different philosophical
Okay.
ideas over the years. I
But
was taught
right,
that
like
way.
when you were taught about how to sound, right? This phonetics.
Right.
But
Um,
you are saying now they don't do that anymore.
it's they call it balanced. So it's a little bit of phonics and a little bit of whole language. It's supposed to be balanced instruction.
Oh, okay.
But if you look at our data here in Indiana, our NAEP data, more than 6 out of 10 kids are not reading proficiently.
Wow, 6 out of 10. That's a lot.
So our reading instruction, not our tier 1 instruction, is not working for most students. So if you look at the 2019 NAEP data, and this is 4th grade data, okay?
Okay.
For Black children, 83% of Black children are not proficient.
83.
83%.
That's in the state of Indiana, right?
State of Indiana, but it's similar across the country.
Okay.
Hispanic, 76%.
76. Wow.
And for white children, 57% in 4th grade. And the reason that's, critical piece of data is that we know from national research that 74% of children who are not proficient in reading in 3rd grade will not be proficient in reading in 9th grade, and they're 4 times less likely to graduate on time.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we know from this data who's going to graduate and who isn't.
Which is kind of shocking. Like by 4th grade, people are supposed to be able to read and at least read the chapter books.
Yes.
And now there are people who are not really, that many cannot read. Wow.
It's really sad.
Yeah. And do you think it's because the ways it was taught how to read?
Yes, I think that we have, it's partly to blame.
Okay.
Is the reading instruction.
Wow. I didn't know that. Wow. That's serious.
I mean, there have been pilots where they've instituted this and they can affect, reach more students.
Mm-hmm. So like, how does it affect a student with dyslexia?
Well, they always refer to the student with dyslexia as being the canary in the coal mine. So when reading instruction is not working, they're the first ones to fall off.
I got you.
Right?
I got you. So
but
a lot
what
of,
I know from my own children, because I paid, and also I went and I learned how to I learned how to teach reading. What my youngest one reads several years above grade level. My other 2 also are very reading proficient. My son took the TEAS test for nursing and he's in the 85th percentile for reading. So it's not that those children cannot learn to read.
Right. So all of children have some form of dyslexia?
They say about up to 1 in 5, up to 20% of the population. But what we have are these curriculum casualties, right? These children who are not learning from the instruction that we're providing. And this is, I'm not trying to speak badly towards teachers, because many teachers, they just have not been provided the training to
Right.
teach reading.
Wow.
So in 2018, we passed legislation, and it provides one teacher in every district who's trained in this type of instruction.
Okay.
But if you look at the districts, you know, it's one in every district is not enough.
Definitely. And you said the 20% of the students, is that in Indiana who have dyslexia?
No, they
20%.
just say up to 20%. And it's on a continuum. Some are mild, some are more severe. But about a third of children, you know, are able to read without much instruction. But a large portion of children need explicit instruction.
Right. And early on, you said 6 out of 10 students cannot read.
Are not reading at grade level.
Cannot read at grade level, right?
Yeah.
6 out
or
of
they're
10.
struggling to read, basically.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
I do believe that.
If you look at our data here in Johnson County.
Yep.
This is the 2021. So we're also, not only do we have a problem in 2019, but COVID has created even a bigger issue.
Right.
So if we look at, for example, if we look at a school like IPS, 82.68% of their 1,812 third graders need intervention. Right. So that's
almost 83% need an intervention.
Yes. And that's about 1,500 kids
that
really need, with 70% of them being at the very lowest levels of literacy.
Wow.
Then if you
when you say need intervention, what that mean?
Well, you identify what they need. You know, I do a Galstill-Ellis.
Okay.
Basically, and I can identify what's missing and how to provide instruction.
Right.
And what we know is it takes 4 times as long to intervene in a 4th grader as it does in late kindergarten. So the longer we wait,
the more problem we have.
Time. So if you look at even our, you know, the schools in Johnson County, Center Grove for the 3rd grade class, it's 126 students, but 32.5% need instruction. So can you imagine how many interventionists you need? So 32.5%.
32.5. So about 33%.
Yes.
Need that.
And that's about 41 students.
Well, right. And that's in Center Grove.
That's one grade, 3rd grade. So typically what you expect, because that's tier 1 instruction, you're going to have the same number roughly in kindergarten for 2nd. So imagine, you know, 3 years of kids, it's a big load for a very small number of interventionists.
Right. And you mentioned about tier 1. I heard that a lot. I'm not quite understand what that means.
So everybody gets tier 1, right? So the idea is you'd like to have as many children become proficient just with general ed curriculum in that tier 1. Then when we see that there's kids that are struggling, that's tier 2. And then ones who need intensive intervention are tier 3. So that way you're not trying to provide intensive intervention to half your.
But like you say, even tier 1 students have difficulty of reading at the grade level.
Yes. And if you look at Clark Pleasant, the Clark Pleasant data, of their 3rd graders, there's 517 students, and 52.8% of those 3rd graders need intervention. So a little over half.
Wow, 52.8%. So
that's 273 kids. How do you provide intervention?
Right. Well, where's the data come from?
So this came from the Annie Casey Foundation, and you can look it up for every school, every district.
Yeah, so that's foundation you have been involved, right?
I'm sorry?
Is that the foundation you have been involved with?
No, but that's a foundation that's focused on literacy.
Oh, just literacy, not necessary for dyslexia.
Correct.
Okay, yeah,
But what that tells you is, okay, so if half of your students need intervention, those kids with dyslexia,
yeah.
you know, and most parents, I don't believe are aware, that their children are not at grade level.
Why is that?
I think that, a lot of times I don't understand the data that that they're getting tested in. The first year that you're tested is third grade.
Mhm.
So unless you understand how to look at that data, a lot of parents don't really know that.
Oh, wow. But I thought that was just like when you have the report, that spelled pretty clearly that if your kids are reading at grade level. No?
No. They may know that they didn't pass, for example, I learn, or they didn't pass, I read, but they don't really know what that means.
Oh, but does that mean like I'm kind of ignoring on that one. Like if you don't pass I learn or I step, doesn't that mean you are not at the grade level?
Does it mean you're not? Probably.
Right. But
Right.
so parents should be aware, right? Your kids didn't
And the
pass,
first
so
year you
therefore,
take that as third grade,
right.
right?
So it's, in a way, it's kind of a little bit late, right?
Yes, very much
So
so.
you should test actually earlier, maybe at the second grade or in the first
Yes.
grade. Yeah,
But they
because
say that if you bring a child up to grade level by second or third grade,
Mhm.
they continue with their peers going forward. But if you delay intervention,
Right.
then what happens is you can intervene and bring them up to grade level in comprehension and accuracy, but their fluency often suffers,
Right.
and that can become a lifelong disability.
Wow.
So,
Uh,
that has to do with brain development.
right. It's right now dyslexia is classified as what called IEP.
So what happens is the school will tell you we don't test for dyslexia. What they test is, do you meet eligibility criteria for special education?
Right.
And then you qualify under 13 different categories, one of which is a specific learning disability.
Okay.
And dyslexia is in that category of a specific learning disability.
Oh, but
So
which
they
mean
look at patterns of strengths and
okay.
weaknesses.
So which means that uh the state will pay more money for that child, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But a lot
So
of our kids with dyslexia go unidentified.
oh really?
Yes.
Oh
They
wow.
go unidentified, and many get then also identified under OHI, which is other health impairment,
Mm.
because of ADHD.
Oh,
So
okay.
there's a 40 to 60% crossover between
Right.
ADHD and dyslexia. So the first day of school,
Uh,
what you see is ADHD.
I see. But isn't so dyslexia should be easy to diagnose, right?
I would think so, but people don't recognize it.
Wow. Because like I see my student that I mean I'm really not a expert by any
Right.
any definition. I mean, just as a teacher, I see some of my students they do struggle. The numbers or the letters they swap places. So that was pretty clear. They have dyslexia.
But not all kids with dyslexia swap numbers and
Okay.
letters either. So, but it is, my kids can identify it in other kids,
Uh-huh.
you know. Um,
So what kind of symptoms if a child has dyslexia?
so as a preschooler, they may struggle with rhyme.
Hmm.
They might struggle with, they early on, they struggle to separate sounds.
Okay.
Um, they they may struggle with writing.
Okay.
And then it changes as they go through school, because by the time you get to college, of course, they've learned the letter names, they've learned the
Hmm.
letter sounds. But my youngest, he was learning like open circuits and closed circuits at 4 years old. but he wasn't learning the alphabet or the sounds of the letters.
Okay.
So, I knew he was bright and that, it wasn't a cognitive delay, but he was not learning, he was not learning the letters. And with two brothers with dyslexia, it was like ding, ding, ding.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it has some kind of heretical
Very, very much
factors.
so.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
So for your kids, what kind of symptom do they have? I mean, typically, like how do you notice that they have that? I mean, you said there is a difficulty rhyme, and sometimes reading difficulty, but how do you know?
so early on,
Mhm.
when you would read with, so I think of my one son that I kind of learned about dyslexia, and you'd teach him a word and you'd tell him the word on one page and then they didn't recognize it on the next page or even the following paragraph.
Mm.
But also just, he wouldn't know, he would put words in to sentences. He would leave out words. He struggled to put sound to symbols. So it's a phonological deficit. So that area of the brain that connects sound to symbol doesn't light up when they look at functional MRI.
Okay. So
But when they provide that instruction, then it begins to light up in that component.
so they don't make a connection between the sound and the symbol.
Yes.
Okay. So that becomes difficult when they actually are trying to read.
And then later in college, so my oldest son, I didn't know he was dyslexic, but he kept telling me when my middle son was identified, he kept telling me, Mom, I'm dyslexic too. You shouldn't worry about me or worry about him so much. But
Okay.
he struggled with phonological awareness in kindergarten. He had to have speech. He was one of the three that had to have speech. He struggled to learn to read, but he got instruction in school in Gillingham, and I didn't know it was something that you needed.
No.
So he didn't really struggle in the same way.
Okay.
But then also a lot of times they might need additional time for tests, and it takes longer to process perhaps. And so he was in college and we said, okay, if you feel like you will use the accommodations, we'll have you tested. And sure enough, he was very dyslexic.
Oh, wow. So you didn't know until he went to
college.
college. Wow. Yeah, this is like, I think most people just, in a way, they develop some kind of coping mechanism to help them.
Either that or you fail, right? I mean, a lot of kids, we're losing so much talent.
Right.
Because we're losing these kids long before then.
Okay.
If you look at the juvenile justice system, 85% of the kids in juvenile justice system are struggling with reading.
Wow.
85%.
85%.
And if we understand, this data, like you look at, the kids at the lowest level, you look at the 1,500 kids that need intervention in IPS third grade.
So what's the reason why they don't have that intervention? Is just they don't have the qualified teachers?
For one, universities have not taught this type of instruction. We're seeing a change in that.
Okay.
University level. Ohio is much further ahead. Mississippi, Arkansas, Colorado, some states are moving further ahead.
Okay.
Providing that instruction. So it's not like it's not the teacher's fault. They haven't been given
They
the
just haven't.
opportunity.
But can they be trained as part of the professional
absolutely.
development? Okay.
I've been trained to teach reading, and I'm a chemist.
Right. Do you offer trainings like, say, to teachers?
I'm not qualified to train.
Okay,
I'm
but
qualified to tutor.
okay, the tutor is student who with dyslexia, right?
I know how to close a gap,
Oh, wow, that's wonderful. Yeah,
but I'm
and
not qualified to train.
okay, and but there are some organization there offers that kind
Yes.
of training, right?
Mhm. I'm
And
on the board of the Scottish Rite, the Children's Dyslexia Center.
oh, really?
Yes, and they provide teacher training.
That's great. That's very good to know.
And they also provide free tutoring for
Okay,
students. But
okay,
we always have a waiting list.
right, right. So
Tutoring,
you're talking about the Scottish Rite in downtown?
yes,
Oh, I didn't know
Mhm.
that. I didn't know they have that kind of program.
Yes.
I've been in that building many times.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because my daughter used to, her ballet school used to perform um, Nutcracker
Oh,
there
okay.
every Christmas season. Oh, I
Yeah.
didn't know that. So they
Yeah,
offer
the
that.
learning center's in the basement of the Scottish Rite.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Okay.
Very thankful for those organizations because it costs a lot of money to train teachers, but also to tutor. So
Oh,
for
okay.
each student, it runs about $5,000.
Okay.
To be able to provide that for free.
Right.
Um,
Wow. So they have a kind of the center is in the basement.
yes,
What kind of services do they provide besides to dyslexia students?
that's specifically what it provides. So instruction,
Okay. Okay.
closing that gap, taking
Right,
each
right,
child
right.
and trying to
So,
close that
so you
gap.
just take student mostly, I guess, from IPS because of the
No,
location.
'cause kids travel from all over. So tutoring runs between $50 and $73 an hour twice a
Mhm.
week. So many families can't afford
Right.
that instruction. So that's why, decoding dyslexia, we advocate strongly. We need more teachers trained. We need
Mhm.
more teachers in the schools who can provide that instruction.
Okay.
But
S-
kids come from all over.
Right. But as say as an educator, how do I get that kind of training?
There's a number of ways. I mean, not only Children's Dyslexia Center, Dyslexia Institute of Indiana. There's a number of providers. The um, Ron Yashimoto, they provide training. So there's the state of Indiana has a list of providers that are approved providers.
Yeah. Right. So you say you homeschooled your youngest child, and what is the reason? Because your older child, they went through all the public schools, right?
Um, Went through private,
Private school. Okay.
yeah, private Christian school.
Oh, okay.
But with my youngest one, we knew before kindergarten that he was dyslexic,
Oh, wow. That's
basically. So we
yeah.
started intervention before kindergarten.
Yeah.
And then he got to about first or second grade and he said, I learn differently. I need multisensory math.
Mm-hmm.
So we said, okay. And we started intervention. So he was getting 2 hours of intervention twice a week.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's really it's really hard at that age because they're in school all day and then it's 2 hours after school twice a week. So we just thought, well, we'll use this opportunity and try something different. So he was able to tutor during the day.
Mm-hmm.
He was fresh
Mm-hmm.
and then work curriculum around that.
All right. So as a kind of homeschool mom, what are the uh actual, I mean, unique challenges to teach someone who has dyslexia?
It helps to know how they learn,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to help instruct.
So you were trained, right? You had the
I'm trained in Orton Gillingham.
okay,
Mhm,
that's great. Yeah.
mhm.
So the
And
parents actually can also kind of, get trained.
absolutely. In fact, in the dyslexia community, a lot of the people who are trained tutors have children who are dyslexia because they've lived through that. They know the pain of
Right,
having
right.
a child who can't
Yeah.
read. And
I
so,
yeah, I really need the training because now I also teach at the private school.
mhm,
It's Apogee School for the Gifted. So the kids
uh-huh,
are pretty pretty smart, but I have one student has dyscalculus.
Okay.
Yeah, so I really don't know how to handle that.
Multisensory math.
Okay. So they had to play with just like objects and all that.
Well, you have to
Oh,
start with the concrete and go before you go to the abstract.
right. Yeah,
And
I really need him to help him to memorize times table
well,
because
sometimes they don't. So like, so even in with dyslexia, so if you look at my boys who both had calculus and
Mm,
got A's and B's, if
right.
I asked them 7 times 8, they may not know.
Really?
Yes, because with dyslexia and dyscalculia, rote memorization is difficult,
Oh, wow.
right? So it doesn't have meaning. So if you watch how their brain works, so if I watch my youngest one, doubles 2 times is easy, right? Doubles.
Mm-hmm.
3 times something is doubles plus 1 set more.
Right. Mm-hmm.
4 times something is doubles plus doubles,
Right.
right? 5 times is easy for
Mm-hmm.
whatever reason.
Right. Right. Because it
5
either ends
times
up with 5 or 10 or 0. So yeah.
and 5 times, and add 1 more set is 6 times,
Right.
right? And it's the 7s and the 8s that are the pain of the
Right.
ones that aren't shared by the other numbers. And then
Yeah.
the 9s can be done on your fingers.
Right. So that's I always use 5 times and 9 times. I call them the anchors.
Yes,
Because once you know them, the rest you can work out from them.
right.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting because they really struggle with rote memorization, and yet they understand higher level math concepts.
Okay, so that's pretty good in terms like logic thinking and all that, abstract thinking
Yeah,
things.
it's anything that's rote memorization. So you have
Okay.
to.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I definitely struggle with rote memorization. Anything I can remember has to make sense to me.
Yes.
Have to have connections. If you just throw me at random words, I just cannot do it. But
So in the
my wife can do it.
can
She had
she
no problem. She can remember the times and days and all that. I have to remember uh, what caused the next event. I can remember that. I said, like when I study history, I know, okay, this event caused that event, then caused that event. But you wanted me to ask me to remember the date, I just
Right.
couldn't do it.
So in teaching kids with dyslexia, that's what you have to know. You always connect to the known, right? Before you
Right.
teach the unknown.
Right.
You connect what you already know.
Right. I
And
mean,
so in the homeschooling community, they often use Math UC. It's
yeah.
a curriculum.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I
but
heard of it.
it's something to check out for your
Yeah.
student
Right.
because it's very multisensory.
Right.
Math UC.
Yeah. Yeah. So in a way, actually, because personally, um, um, I'm more interested in abstract math, like algebra. I just
Mhm.
love it. So mostly I like to play with symbols. So personally, I'm not quite sure about multisensory, to play with things, but that's something I'm learning because there are kids definitely they have to learn from that.
Well, it's probably those foundational pieces. 'Cause
Right.
what you find is a lot of kids don't have the foundational
Right.
pieces, right?
Yeah.
And we're teaching
Yeah.
abstract concepts.
Right. Yeah.
Taking
So
that
you
foundation.
first really have to help them at least know how to, what they mean by adding, by
Right.
subtraction, by multiplication, by division. Yeah. Once they understand why is that, then that helps a lot. But unfortunately, I think in most schools, emphasis is on rote memorization.
Yes.
Instead of tell them why behind it.
So, and I've sat through some meetings where they talk about learning loss during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at math
Mm-hmm.
in both groups, this is across grade levels, okay?
Right.
For paid lunch and also free and reduced lunch. And in math, there's significant.
Right.
And that means they're more than a year behind in
Yes.
all grade levels.
Right.
But if you think about it, you don't really have We don't have RTI in math. I think we don't do a very good job of trying to figure, I don't know that there's a process really for figuring out what foundational pieces are missing.
Yeah, as a teacher, when I was taught at I was hired to teach calculus. So the kids come to my class, they are basically the kids who are considered smart kids, right? Otherwise, you won't go to calculus. So in the school there, the kids are either go to calculus or go to college algebra. So you can see the separation there. Now, even for the kids come to my class, most of them still have foundational problems. Is that things they learned, they didn't retain.
They may not have ever learned it.
Right. So the way I found it out is that they were taught, but they were taught how, but not necessarily why. So without understanding why, it can easily be forgotten. I think most of us as human beings, like we like to have connections. That's how we remember things, right? There is one thing leads to the other, right? When we smell something that give us good memory, then things like that. But if we just throw random things at students, it's very hard for them to remember. And math especially, it's become so fragmented. There is no, at least you don't see the connection between chapters. Chapter 1, you learn this, chapter 2, you learn that, chapter 3, you learn that, has not been. And the one thing I really don't like is they threw everything down to the grade level. So like even at like say let's just say middle school level. I mean, not only you're going to learn algebra, you only learn geometry, you also learn probability, or also learn statistics. And those things are different.
Very different.
Yeah. And you throw all that into the same same
time period. Yeah.
Right. I mean,
the
kids are confused.
Yes.
Yeah. There's no wonder they are so confused.
And also, if you look at language and reading, there's what you call response to intervention. There's RTI. So you provide the instructions. Some kids don't get it. So then you start forming groups to provide more intensive instruction, deliver it in a different way. You don't really have that for math.
No. Yeah. Math is
why not? Why did you have RTI?
No, math basically is most kids just muddle along. Once they done chapter 1, they get a new fresh start with chapter 2. So anything you haven't learned on chapter 1 does not really matter that much.
But if you look at our state data, so for, let me tell you, 8th grade, 72.7% of the kids are not proficient in 8th grade. 72.7, yeah. So about 73% are not proficient.
In language?
In math.
Okay, yeah.
69.5 in 7th, 67% in 6th. So these kids are not only behind in grade level in reading, but they're also behind grade level in math.
Yeah, and also once you have that, then you just
impossible to catch up.
You just lose them.
Yeah.
They hate math.
Yes.
Once the student hate math, then it's very hard to teach them. And the thing is, like that's one of the reasons I left teaching at school, is like we just pretend it's okay. We just put in, like, they still struggle with basic arithmetics. So now we're going to teach them, geometry, algebra, and even calculus, as if nothing happened.
Right. And if you think about it, we do the same with reading. So, we have these large groups of kids who aren't able to read.
Right.
And we just kind of move along to the next.
Right. Then we're going to teach you something else.
And it's impacting every other subject.
Right. And there's another thing which kind of shocked me. And I think that also kind of indicate what is going on in school is that the school I taught at, the kids actually pretty much learn Spanish from kindergarten. And so they learn that until pretty much up to 12th grade. So they have learned a lot of Spanish, right?
Mhm.
So you expect them to at least be able to carry a conversation. No, they don't. They don't. I mean, all my students, at least the student I got, which senior student, they have learned maybe 8 years, 10 years of Spanish, and all they can say is, "Can I go to the bathroom?" Because that's they use most time. And that would just kind of make me wondering, like, what's going on? Why do you keep teaching higher level Spanish? Why, I mean, how do you teach that? That part I don't understand. I mean, if your kid's still struggling with basic vocabularies, how do you teach higher level Spanish?
I think what I've been seeing too is I'm seeing some kids' schedules. And for example, I saw one where the child goes into school at 7:30 in the
Mhm.
morning and they feed them breakfast and there's some social emotional learning. And then there's, they do their kind of their electives, their specials, and they have 1.5 hours of reading with a curriculum that we know doesn't really do a very good job for all students. But by 11 o'clock, that's all they've had in academics is an hour and a half of academics. So if you look at, they talk about,
So what happens in the afternoon?
pardon?
What happened in the afternoon? You said in the morning they had some
There
academic.
was math and there was 2 days where they did social studies
Mhm.
and another day that they did science.
Okay.
But a lot of the schools in the lower grades aren't getting any science or any social studies, no history.
Mm.
But if you look at, there's a book called The Knowledge Gap, and it talks about, reading instruction. And part of it is how much knowledge you're being exposed to, right?
Mm.
So when you take science classes or you have history classes, it's all that vocabulary and just that content knowledge. So if you're putting in a lot of so it's not only understanding what your child is being taught, but what they're not being taught, right? So if they're not getting that type of academics,
Right.
then they lose out on that content knowledge.
Right. And also, like, even if they can expose to that, if they taught all those subjects, and they will forget about what they learned anyway. So that's the thing when I was teaching, because I was I used to be engineer, so I kind of switched my career and got in there. So it's kind of like someone kind of from outside. When you are someone from outside, you will see something that it was taken for granted, as if it's not, it's okay. One thing I can find is that, we all know the kids do not retain what they learned.
And don't you think part of that's because you're not connecting to what you
Right,
learned and you don't have the review each year,
right,
building
exactly.
up and
But the thing is, like, we are all okay with it.
well, I don't
As
know that everybody's okay.
yeah, well, at least they squirm when too. No, there is no, nobody is complaining about. We teachers will complain because they're supposed to learn that last year, but students think it's normal, and then parents are okay with it, and the administrators are okay with it. It's as if, like, if we forgot everything to learn, as long as they get the letter grade, everyone is okay.
Well, and we always tell parents of children with dyslexia, don't pay attention to the letter grade.
Right.
Because a lot of people say, oh, well, he got a B, he
No,
got
no,
an
no,
A, he's
no,
doing
no, no,
fine.
no,
But
no, no.
no, there's an inflation of letter grades.
Exactly.
And you cannot go by the letter grade. So,
Exactly.
they take formative assessments during the school year, beginning, middle, and end of year a lot of times. And if you can look at the Lexile level, for example, of the reading section, that'll give you a general idea of what
Right.
grade level you're at. But
Yeah, I
most
think
people don't know that.
yeah, I think that's the main thing. Like in the past, we still can trust the letter grade,
Right,
but not anymore.
right.
And right now you got B, and pretty much everybody got B.
Yeah,
Most of them got A. So that's kind of hides what's really going on.
right.
People like I taught math. I know that, like, even if you don't understand anything in math, you can still get B or C. You will never get D or F, because that's how the grades get inflated.
Right.
Mhm. And nobody's, I mean, the sad thing is, like I said, I was kind of like outside got in, so I was shocked by that. But people in the system, I think it's kind of gradual, so they can get used to it.
And I really do believe that most parents have no idea. Like,
Mhm.
we would be hearing a lot more
Well,
relative to
yeah, I
students'
think
data.
their point of reference is like 20, 30 years ago, right?
Well,
That's
what
when
they've
they,
lived through, right?
right. But now it's totally different. That's something they did not realize, especially in terms academics and what kind of grade, letter grades we give to people, to students.
When
I
they
mean,
were going through the data for, COVID data relative to where students are, what they talked about is that, there's a large number of students that are more than a year behind,
yeah,
and that they will likely take, 5 years to catch up, and then many will not catch up. And if the interesting piece of data was, they said what they found was the lowest achievers showed very little decline during the pandemic. And I thought, oh yeah, we know who those are. Those are the kids with dyslexia. We know that the interventions are not working. So
right.
really didn't make any difference, right? That they
Exactly, because they haven't really learned.
didn't work.
Right.
The interventions aren't working. But the sad
It's
part
sad.
is
Yeah.
now we just have so many more kids who need the interventions,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Exactly. And yeah. And at this time, I mean, I think it's also somehow the pandemic led parents to see what's going on and
Yes, I would
realize that
agree.
the kids, I mean, their children are not learning,
Right.
even though they get A's and B's, but they're not really learning anything.
Yes, I think a
So
lot were shocked by the
yeah,
instruction.
right. The lacking of it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
And
So yeah,
teachers really want to do the right thing. I really believe that. And I've seen teachers that go through then training that cry because they feel like they've wasted so many years and never had that opportunity for that
right.
training.
Yeah. I mean, there are many good teachers. I mean, I can testify for that.
Yes, I mean, they didn't
Is
go to school for the money, right? I
right.
mean, they didn't go to teach.
Yeah. I mean, especially I taught in a Christian private school. I mean, teacher
Uh-huh.
go there not for money. I mean, especially we got paid less than
Right.
teacher in public
Public school.
schools. So we're
Yeah,
there. I mean, we care about the kids,
yeah.
but it's the system itself is the problem,
Yes,
because we have to. I mean, the school is credited by the state, so I have to follow the state standard. And all the textbooks, especially math textbooks, was written for the standard, not really for the student. Student will never use their books, never. They will never. I mean, they just basically the teacher, whatever teachers taught them, just follow that. So, but the thing is, you still have to teach them those things. Um, Even though you, as a teacher, you know that it doesn't make sense. You shouldn't put so many random things throughout the kids and expect the kids will retain that knowledge.
right. And it's bigger even than the school because it's the universities teaching the
Yes, yeah, yeah.
teachers.
That's even a bigger problem, and I didn't realize that until just very recent. So I have been listening to Jordan Peterson. I don't know if you know him.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, he is a professor in Canadian universities. So he has a show as we're talking about what's happening now in higher education. It's not about academics anymore. It's whole social justice and anti-risks and critical race theory and all that. It's
But what you're telling me is our reading scores will continue to drop.
yeah. Unless parents take action. I think one thing is that a silver lining in a way for the pandemic is so many people, parents looking into homeschool as an option.
Yes.
Yeah, before people say, oh, I don't have time, and the teachers know more and then they can learn more in school, but then they say, oh, actually they're not learning. So why don't we start our own? Yeah.
I think
So
most parents just thought that you could send your children to school and they'd somehow learn to read and they would be able to do.
right. And especially if you don't aware uh, your children have been suffering,
Mhm.
right? Because normally the kids won't tell parents on that.
Well, I'll often see kids even in high school reading at like a third grade level,
Hmm.
and the parent has no idea. And
Right.
yet they hear, well, they're just lazy. If they would just try harder, they could do it. I'm sure they could do it if they just tried a little harder. But imagine when the content is several grade levels higher. How do you do that?
Right. They just don't know where to start. That's the problem. So
Mhm.
if you don't know where to start, working harder does not help.
No, no.
Yeah. Mm,
In fact, they're working very, very hard. Even
right. Well, I mean, also, I just kind of uh, uh, about dyslexia and like for parents who think their kids have dyslexia and just like it's not all bad. And like you said, a lot of kids with dyslexia are very bright. They
yes.
just need to learn differently. And as an engineer, I worked as an engineer. I know a lot of engineers have dyslexia.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, as you mentioned, someone in Eli Lilly
Yes.
who had, I mean,
Organic chemists,
yeah,
again, that RNS
right.
enantiomers, they can do that without.
Well, and this is actually what I learned. I had a colleague, and he was very, very talented, and he had severe dyslexia. Like he told me that the letter actually jumps out at him. Is in like not he has to reorder it. Like in his brain, he has to overcome what his eyes see.
But unfortunately, if it was that easy, I don't know. It's
I
not
know.
really a visual thing. They see the same thing we do. It's
Uh,
just that you have to teach that sound symbol and your
right, right.
teams and your phonemes
Yeah,
and most
but
of them.
yeah, but there is something I learned that is actually dyslexia in some way is help them to see um, 3D objects
That's true. I've heard that.
because to them the order doesn't matter, which is
Mhm.
what you see, right? When you're dealing with, or maybe you're dealing with geometry, that the order, the location does not matter. And so they can actually visualize many things in their head, and that as an engineer that definitely help. Like you said, the chemist, all the molecule put
Yes,
together, right? They
right.
they they have they can easily visualize that, which is huge help. And I also heard that a lot of mechanics,
I've heard
people
this.
work with their hands. Actually,
Yeah.
they have that.
And good at problem solving. A lot of people with
Right,
dyslexia are good at,
right.
and
But
maybe because they've had to learn to problem solve their whole life, to
probably
compensate.
right, probably they learn how to solving problems. Yeah, because
Yeah,
definitely that's something we don't teach them in school.
right. One
We
of the
teach
things that we really encourage parents to do is to have their kids ear read. So what they understand could be several grades above what they're able to decode.
Oh,
So
what do you mean by ear read?
so this is ear reading and this is eye reading, right?
Okay.
So
Uh,
ear reading is listening to it,
oh,
because Well, okay, so the data says that a fifth grader who reads in the 90th percentile of reading
Mhm.
can read in 2 days what a student in the 10th percentile can read in an entire year.
Oh, wow.
So think about how much content knowledge and vocabulary
Right.
a child at the 90th percentile is able to absorb. So
Mm.
if, while we're providing that intervention so that they can decode, we
Mm.
try to get them ear reading so that they can keep up with that
Mm.
content knowledge and vocabulary.
Right. Wow. Wow. Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Actually,
It was
talking
really
with you. I mean,
interesting.
this is
Yeah.
just for me, just scratching the surface. I really want to learn more, and at least to learn how to help my student who suffer dyslexia and this calculus, because that actually, like you said, in the end, I think you think about up to 20%, right? People with dyslexia, the students.
Mhm.
So that's a lot.
So your student at the school
Uh,
for, what was it, Apogee? Or
Apogee School for the Gifted.
yes, so what we call those students that have like dyscalculia and or dyslexia, and they're twice exceptional. So you can be gifted and dyslexic,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. A
either,
lot of actually gifted people have dyslexia,
yes,
and they just learn early how to handle it.
or they're able to get the intervention that they need,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
They're-
Yeah. Not that many people I know that get intervention, but at least what I learned, I mean, based on my experience, people, the engineers I've been kind of working with, talking to, they just learned on their own.
Hmm.
They learned how to handle it on their own. Because back then they don't even talk about it.
Well, they were probably getting more of that instruction in school too.
There could be some student, I mean, teachers and kind of how, or maybe they just work hard on their own. And sometimes you do have that motivation if you want something hard enough. Like I remember, like I kind of grew up during a cultural revolution, right? And then all the books are burned. It's very hard to get old book, like an old novel. And all those old novels are written in we call complex Chinese character. Like when I started learning, we learned they call the simplified uh, version. So the complex version actually is pretty hard. Many strokes. I have no idea why they used that many strokes back then, but I mean Chinese language actually came from just pictures. So each character is evolved from pictures. So I guess that makes sense. You have so many strokes, right? You're
Right.
painting something, but nobody taught me how to read them. It's just because I want to read the old novels desperately, because there's nothing else to read. During Cultural Revolution, they burned pretty much everything,
Oh my
the
God.
books. Yeah, I know. So I had got hold of the old novel, so I learned how to read complex characters. I think a lot of probably people with dyslexia, because they are interested either in science or engineering or something, they just kind of
If you look at the
help themselves.
numbers, though, if you look at the numbers,
Mhm,
for, for the data, I
mhm.
would say that you have to be able to teach explicitly,
Oh yeah,
to
definitely.
be,
Yeah, yeah,
to get that sound symbol.
right. Yeah, I mean, I think people actually figured out that at least, I mean, those are in minorities. And I think for most of the kids with dyslexia, they probably just giving up,
Which is sad, very
which is
sad.
sad. Yeah, and I've been kind of volunteer kind of uh, in different ways to help inner city kids, and that's something always concerning me. I mean that we talk about school to prison pipeline,
Oh,
and
yes.
that is just so real. And
Mhm.
most kids, inner city kids, they are just illiterate, and they
Mhm.
don't have anything. You know, there's there is no way for them to get into the society in some kind of profession or some kind of work. So it's easy for them to get into, prostitution or drugs and all that. And we see a
I've
lot of
seen
problems.
students that had to work on the line in the back of a fast food because they couldn't work on the front line because they can't read the menu.
They cannot read the manual. Wow.
Not read the menu. So think about that.
Right.
And that's very common. That's not an unusual situation. And think about the 85% in the juvenile justice system.
Right, right. And another phenomenon I have seen in the past few years is graphic novels for grown-ups. I don't know if that's also indication a lot of grown-ups now
literate,
right,
struggle with reading.
right, right.
I think what's frustrating to me is we collect all this data. We know who they are.
Right.
We know how to intervene. We know how to close a gap. We can do it.
Right.
We just have to have sufficient people to be able to do that.
And you said you have been kind of working with legislatures and all that. How's that? Are they?
So we've gotten really good with the legislature over the last, we started in 2013. I think that they have a better understanding of, some of the situations, and they've been very open. So when we passed legislation in 2015 and 2018, we had bipartisan support.
Oh, really? That's great. Yeah. So you have some champions in the legislature, right? To advocate, to push your to push the bills and all that. That's great. That's great.
Yes.
But do they have any kind of extra money set aside to train the teachers?
There's what's called an early learning grant that many teachers have access to get training.
Okay.
But we're trying to advocate for example, CARES dollars, or we need something to kind of push schools to use some of the money, the millions of dollars they got through COVID relief to train teachers.
Right.
It'll make an impact on these numbers.
Right. How about any help to parents who wants to learn how to help their kids with dyslexia? There's any kind of grants or foundations or something to help them?
You can get training through the Children's Dyslexia Center for free.
Okay.
You have to have a college degree.
Right.
If you're a homeschooling parent and you're looking to help your student, there's Barton is a good, it's a curriculum that's based on Morton Gillingham that a lot of families have found success with. And then All About Reading, All About Spelling for children who are more mildly dyslexic. A lot of them have found success.
Right. Well, if I got parents who need help on that, can I refer them to you?
Oh yeah, anytime. Really.
Okay, that's great. Appreciate what
you can navigate the school. I can help.
Right.
Too.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
I've enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah, same here. Same here. Okay.
Get my brain going.
Right. Okay. Bye.
Okay. Good night. Bye-bye.